perfectionism is simultaneously destructive and celebrated in our society. We actually advocate for the attempt to be perfect in our actions, in our creations. And it's interesting that from the spiritual perspective, in the center of each of our being, our divine essence is perfect, and that can't change. But over that inner perfection, that spiritual divine presence that is within everyone and all things, there's personality, and there's choices, and there's history, and there's memory, and there's influence. Things get in the way of our innate perfection at the spiritual level. And we go out into the world, and I believe that we have this external focus, and we start to learn to push, to create, and to do in an imbalanced way. To strive to be your best is a wonderful thing. To strive to be perfect is setting yourself up for failure. I cannot find peace, I cannot be at ease until this thing is done perfectly. I want to welcome everyone from around the world in this greater circle, the greater circle of recovery, the greater circle of people seeking health and wellness, the greater circle of people who are interested in an integrated, holistic approach to living, which includes mind and body, energy and spirit. I want to welcome everybody. And I have in front of me right here today, three souls, three amazing human beings who have come to sit in circle and to bring an inquiry into this space, each of them. This process of inquiry and contemplation and exploration is, for me, one of the most important parts of my life. It is a tool. It is a way to mirror with each other our mutual experiences and to learn from each other, to explore together. So such a wonderful and powerful thing. And I'm grateful to the three of you for taking time. I will never actually be able to express to you. I'm fully psyched and so grateful that you're here and that you've decided to spend a little time with everybody in this greater circle today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Which one of you brave souls would like to go first today and bring your inquiry into the circle? Okay, Kevin, let's hear what's come up for you.
Hi, Tommy. Thanks so much for having me. A little background of my inquiry here. A few months ago, I was traveling with my wife, and we were listening to a book on tape about complex PTSD by Pete Walker. And at one point during this talk, he's talking about putting together your recovery team or your healing team. And he said, don't worry about getting it perfect. Just get it good enough and then get going. And that struck me like, what? That's an option? Good enough's an option,
Good enough.
And it really stuck with us, and it stuck with me for this whole time. And I realized that it's always been a pattern of mine, to always be looking for improvements and kind of not being okay with merely good enough. And I'll give you a little background. My career has been as a custom home builder and working on high-end custom homes. And so if we were to say good enough, that was really not a good thing to say, because we could always do better. And, as the person running the project, and at least thought I was in charge, I could always hold people to a little higher standard. And, what really came into my consciousness after hearing that was that I carried that energy of not good enough with me in my personal life. And it's just laid there as maybe a dissatisfaction, dis-ease. That was kind of a low level anxiety. So this idea of things being good enough has just really been really liberating to me. And in a way I didn't realize. And so my question for you is, I'd like you to reflect on this idea of seeking perfection, as opposed to just understanding when things are good enough and time to move on, you know? So separating that, because we always have this idea of striving for something better and more and so forth. And it's hard to give a pause sometimes and separate that sort of professional aspirations from the personal thing. And it's, and it's fine to strive for excellence, but unless it comes at the expense of a sense of contentment and a calm mind and relational harmony. And so that's my inquiry to you. How do you see that related, particularly as it relates to recovery? And I really reflected on that in my own recovery. So
Yes. Thank you, Kevin, so much for this inquiry. I'm going to reflect it back to you and then explore a little bit, and then we'll come back together and we'll speak. I'm hearing this inquiry about the difference between perfection and good enough. I'm hearing this inquiry about a mechanism, a thought process that could get in the way of someone's presence and someone's comfort. I'm thinking about this inquiry as an exploration of the space between doing and being. And it really hits on the core issue for all of us, which is, when is enough enough? So I want to go through these things and see what comes up. Perfectionism is simultaneously destructive and celebrated in our society. We actually advocate for the attempt to be perfect in our actions, in our creations. And it's interesting that from the spiritual perspective, in the center of each of our being, our divine essence is perfect. And that can't change. But over that inner perfection, that spiritual, divine presence that is within everyone and all things, there's personality, and there's choices, and there's history, and there's memory, and there's influence. Things get in the way of our innate perfection at the spiritual level. And we go out into the world, and I believe that we have this external focus, and we start to learn to push, to create, and to do in an imbalanced way. To strive to be your best is a wonderful thing. To strive to be perfect is setting yourself up for failure. Not you, but any of us. And I think that anyone in our greater circle can relate to the concept of perfectionism. I cannot find peace, I cannot be at ease until this thing is done perfectly. From a perspective of procrastination is fueled in part by perfectionism. So let me speak about that. To desire to do something, to want to create something, to pursue anything, and to have that heartfelt desire to do it or to need to, but then not to do it, we refer to that as procrastination. There's something I need to do or want to do, but I'm not doing it. One of the reasons that we get into procrastination is because we feel the need to do something that's big or daunting or not, but we feel the need to do it perfectly. And that desire to do something perfectly creates a feeling in us of overwhelm, paralysis. I'm not going to get started because I need it to be perfect. So on the one hand, we have this innate perfection within us that we're disconnected from. And I'm going to tie this all together at the end. But on the other hand, we're out in the world and we're living our life, and we have desires that arise in our heart and things that we want to do and jobs that we need to do and responsibilities that are legitimate that we need to take care of. And sometimes a perfectionistic streak will prevent us from getting to those things because it becomes daunting and paralyzing and it's too much for me and it's not going to be perfect anyway, so why bother getting started? So this is one of the major, I refer to procrastination as an aggravation and an addiction. I believe that's an addiction. It fits my definition of any behavior you continue despite it bringing a negative consequence into your life. So perfectionism can get in the way of forward progress. It's the enemy of moving forward, because if you can't do it perfectly, you might not do it at all, and you might not even try. The procrastination mantra, the procrastination breaking mantra is small things done consistently in strategic places over time bring progress. Small things done consistently in strategic places over time brings progress. And so this indicates that we're going to have to take steps, sometimes baby steps, in order to move down a road where if we have steadiness and consistency, we can look back and we can say, wow, we've made real progress towards the goal of creation, of the thing that we're trying to create, or the goal that we're trying to reach. When you're making those small steps, all along the way, there's nothing that's perfect about it, other than just committing to the process and letting go and knowing that it's going to work out. It's going to work out. In other words, we're going to create something here, or we're going to achieve something here, and it may be messy along the way. And the messiness of life and the messiness of recovery and the messiness of our progress is all a part of the journey. We train ourselves into perfectionism. We learn it. Somewhere along the way, we perceive anything less than perfect as being a problem. And from that moment on, when that tape goes into the subconscious mind and says, I need to be perfect here, I need to show up in just such a way, people need to see me in just such a way, the things I need to be just such a way, we now begin to live in disconnection from ourselves, and we live in the dis-ease of addiction. And it won't matter if we're taking drugs or not, alcohol or not. The addiction is the disconnection from self. That's the core. We have disconnected from ourself. We now need to be something, which, by the way, is impossible, perfect. We need to be that thing, show up in this way, and we will live a life of unbelievable anxiety and stress. Now, I know a few people who are in that boat. It's very hard to get their attention. They are overwhelmed by life. It feels like they're swimming upstream. And they're caught in this frequency of addiction that we speak about in Recovery 2.0. For them, somewhere along the way, they learned that lesson that said, I have to be a certain way other than how I am. I have to show up, and it's got to be perfect. So forward progress essentially stops there. The ironic thing about this is that when a person is in the perfectionistic mode, even when they produce great works and do great things, it doesn't create a sense of peace. So your inquiry initially brings up for me this discussion of the pathology of perfectionism in the face of an innate perfection, which is within us, which we're disconnected from. And we go seeking out in the world to find our perfection in our deeds and in other people's eyes. And we try to get the approval, and we try to get the thing that we're looking for, which of course, with all addiction, we can never be satiated until this mechanism is dealt with, the mechanism of perfectionism. Good enough. That's your term that you bring up here today. What is good enough? It's a weird turn of phrase. It's a really strange turn of phrase. Because from a certain perspective, it makes us feel like we're settling. And there's a difference between being in acceptance and releasing the outcomes of our actions and settling for something. We don't like to settle. I've never met the person who has experienced addiction in their life in any way that likes mediocrity. We don't like mediocrity. We don't like to settle for things. I think we all share this grand desire to live life to its fullest. The fact that we experienced addiction and hurt ourselves and perhaps hurt others through addictive behaviors, it doesn't mean that we're not interested in living a great life. It means that we got on the wrong train. The idea, the destination was right, but we got on a train that wasn't going to take us to that destination. So this turn of phrase of good enough, I think we need to come up with some new language. We probably should do it right now. I'm going to show up the best way I can today. My prayer when I wake up these days right now, I mean, literally this year, 2024, as we're speaking together on this podcast, I am working with this thought process when I wake up. No matter what, if I have an anxious thought or a negative thought, a positive thought or any thought, I'm directing my mind to ask a question before I get out of bed today, every day. And the question is, I wonder what's possible today. I wonder what's the best thing that could happen today. I'm not asking, I wonder what good enough looks like today. Or I wonder what would happen if I were perfect today. I gave up those kinds of prayers a long time ago, thank God, when I got sober and started to learn that I had been saying asking myself internally those kinds of questions. How can I get through the day today? How can I just get through it? Now it's, I wonder what's possible with this day. And I wonder, what's the best thing that could happen today? When I ask a question like that, I'm starting to move into a sacred collaboration. That I'm in unity with a lot of different forces, some of which I can see and some of which I can't. Some of which I'm aware of and some of which I'm not. There's a field of intelligence and consciousness. I want to access it. One of the ways I can access it is set the intention. Literally, I intend to find out what's possible today. I intend to connect with that bandwidth of intelligence, which we refer to as consciousness itself or wisdom. Some people say, I'm connecting with my higher power or with God or with spirit. For me, it's more practical than that language leads me to believe. The language I'm using is, I intend to collaborate today I'm going to collaborate with the seen and unseen forces to find out what's possible today. In the collaboration, everything changes from the most fundamental activities that I'm doing, breathing, to complex, more outward focused things like creating, writing, speaking to other people, connecting with folks, eating food, and the different things we do every given day. My breathing changes, and this is critically important to this inquiry here. I go from somebody who takes the next breath to somebody who receives the next breath. That shift and that understanding that I'm on the receiving end of life changes my attitude, moves me into this collaboration that we're speaking about, brings me to a sense of gratitude and humility. Wow. Thank you for this next breath. And from that place, that shift that takes place when I start to receive a breath rather than take it, my tone changes. My attitude changes. The things that I want to create or experience today, I recognize I can work towards these experiences and these creations. I have purpose, and I can show up in life in a meaningful way. And I'm in collaboration all the time. Something about the understanding of that collaboration takes away the pressure on both sides of this coin. I no longer am concerned about perfectionism. I'm concerned about showing up the best I can in this collaboration and seeing what's possible. I recognize that my clarity of mind is important. If I don't have clarity of mind, if my mind is fogged or confused or mystified or stupefied or engaged in addictive substances or behaviors, I can't show up the way I intend to show up. So I'm not trying to be perfect. I'm trying to be completely present with me in this collaboration. On the other side of the coin, trying to be good enough, in a sense, just to show up in humility and to do one's best. That is, you've already taken care of the good enough thing, but beyond that, you're trying to see all that's possible. And that's the language I prefer than, I hope today is going to be a good enough day. Although I understand we're talking about finding peace with one's efforts. So that phrase again, that weird phrase, good enough. I guess just moving into this new language of let's see what's possible and let's be in this great grand collaboration and let's do the work that we need to do, which is to be conscious, to be aware, and to learn and to work together with others to create things, because nothing we ever create is solo. Our life is while it is our life as an individual, we are always connected and always collaborating with people and creatures and the planet and food and with the spirit that runs through all things. So this attempt to find peace, we can't do it trying to be perfect. We've covered that. It isn't, the mantra of being at peace isn't, well, this is good enough. That's not the mantra we're looking for. I think, to a great extent, the mantra is, let's see what's possible. Let's apply ourselves. Let's do our best and take the actions. And let's let go of the outcome of these actions, knowing that we did our best. We come to an investigation of guilt and forgiveness in this inquiry. Because in retrospect, we'll look back and very often people say, I should have done better. I could have done better. It should have been different. If I had done X, Y, and Z, this would have been a better outcome. And we forget that what you're really saying in those moments is, I believe I can do better now. Why didn't I do better then? And the answer is because you couldn't. If you could have, you would have. But the unfolding of life, the unfolding of awareness, the unfolding of intelligence, and the right actions and the right words and the right way of being that unfolds from greater awareness comes when it comes. And so there's an acceptance in that as well. That, I mean, I could easily look back at my behavior in active addiction and a lot of my behavior in recovery, and I could say, wow, whew, not my best foot forward. How did that happen? Or any one of us could wake up any given day, compare ourselves to someone else, and go down the line of saying, wow, I should be further along than I am. And all you really need to say is, I'm going to do my best today. I've learned so much. I'm going to apply the things that I've learned, and I'm going to see what's possible today. There's a great analogy that my teacher, Guru Prem, gave me about being on a yoga mat and desiring to be in a more flexible body. And what he told me was, your consistent presence on the mat, your consistent practice, showing up day in and day out on the mat, leads to the possibility that you will be invited into greater flexibility. And I love that. I love the idea of being invited into greater flexibility. Without that consistency, you just show up every now and then and expect that you're going to be in this, more flexible body, and that's just simply not the way that it works. But we want to get the invitation. And so we show up with humility, and we show up consistently, and we do the best that we can. And it's not perfect. Perfect in the sense of some idea about what would happen in your life if you did everything just precisely exactly the way you're always supposed to do things, which is just so unrealistic and so much pressure. So from the yogic standpoint, and I would say from the recovery standpoint, what we're looking for is presence. Ultimately, we want to be here and now. And in order to be here and now, we can only receive the next breath, collaborate, be still enough to listen to the true voice within, the teacher within each one of us, the guide within each one of us, that consciousness that says, all right, in your core, you are perfect. Any thought that gets in the way of that is just the ego. Just the mind. Our effort today is to remove the things that block us from the understanding that in our true essence, there's already perfection. And from uniting with that divinity within each one of us, we can then go out into the world and we can show up fully. There's no more need to be perfectionistic because we're in touch with the part of us that is connected to all things, that divinity within. Therefore, that pressure to go beyond what's possible today, to be more than we could be, that incessant addictive pressure drops away. It doesn't mean we're not trying. It doesn't mean we don't work hard. It doesn't mean we don't show up fully in our life. It's just that mechanism that would keep us suffering in a lack of presence, that voice settles down so that you recognize, wow, I am so much more than just okay. I am connected. My efforts are in alignment, solid. I make mistakes because I'm human and I learn from those mistakes. That's perfect. That's the perfectly imperfect way to be. The pressure of perform morphs itself into joyfully pursue the creative impulses of your heart and enjoy the journey. Now, I'd be the first one to say, easier said than done on some days. But even there is an opportunity for self-forgiveness and to be humble and recognize, wow, this is hard stuff. Let me keep practicing. Let me keep showing up. And perhaps soon I'll be invited into ease. I'll be invited into a sense of presence. My creativity will go through the roof. My intuition will go through the roof. My skill, my kindness, my compassion, my ability to be with myself successfully, all of those abilities will go way up. And any sense of, well, this is good enough, or I have to be more, I have to be perfect, all of that drops away in the light of presence. Now we just get to be and pursue from a connected place, from what I call the state of yoga or union. We establish ourselves in that state, and then we act from there. We make the best efforts we can. We learn what we need to learn. When we see patterns, we address them. We break out of the patterns that no longer serve us, and we are on an evolutionary path. Just being on the path is the joyful part. It doesn't require that you get anywhere. Just being on the path is the part that matters the most. And then we stay open to learning, and we stay humble, and we serve the need of the moment. And the need of the moment for me, I'll give you an example. For me, like I want to write something. I really, really want to write something right now. It's coming through. And the reason I know that is because I think about it. It comes into my mind. And I've not been perfect with it. And I just feel the desire. And so my job is to put aside distractions and to create the conditions for actions to arise out of that beautiful desire. And my book won't be perfect, but it'll be the thing that I need to express. And that is perfect in and of itself. Finally, for sure, and I'm going to speak to myself as much as I'm speaking to anybody else, for sure we are not in balance in our society today. For sure we have missed the balance between human being and human doing. Somehow, we got off track and we have become addictive in our doing. There's a real pathology to that. And so the idea of truly sitting to watch a sunset, awakening to watch a sunrise, sitting with a tree or a flower for a period of time. In this day and age, generally speaking, seems like an irresponsible and silly romantic notion to many people who are too busy to really enjoy the sunset or the tree or the flower. It's literally getting in the way of their doing. And when we live in such a way, we miss the gift of creation. We miss the gift of being. We miss the gift and the awe and the wonder of just being alive. It's like somebody showing you the most beautiful painting you've ever seen in your life. And you're like, I just don't have time for this. I appreciate that this is beautiful. I can't feel it. I can't access it. I'm not there to appreciate this beauty. That's what we're doing. And when you can't appreciate the natural beauty of existence, of the planet, of people, of creatures, of food, the joy of just being with the unbelievable artwork we're being shown by the Creator and creation every single day. When that's no longer working, well, now you got to go into social media. Now you got to go into AI. Now you got to go into VR. You need to move out of reality because you no longer are attuned to access the beauty and the wonder and the awe of life itself. And I can't think of a greater tragedy. So for those people who push in the name of we have to be all we can be, yes, and there has to be a balance. We have to strike a balance between doing and having and being. The addiction to doing and the addiction to having will strip you of your ability to be. And the joy and the medicine that is nature itself, you won't have access to that. Then we got to go out and get some medication. And I mean that. So to say that this is an important inquiry would be an understatement. And I know that you bring it up from the perspective of, I want to experience the feeling of good enough, meaning I'm not forever pushing. But there's just so many important things that this hits on. And we're only really able to scratch the surface in the time period that we have. But Kevin, these are some of the things that come to mind. And I'd love to hear what comes up for you as you hear this exploration.
Wow, so much. And I just love the way you can take an inquiry and expand it in a way that I have no idea where you're going with it. You pull it all together in such a beautiful way. And the thing that kept coming up for me when you were talking was just the power of language and the way we talk to ourselves and the power of words. And I realized that the term good enough, in my mind, I was saying to myself, good enough. And through the course of your exploration here, what came to me was, hey, it's good. I'm enough. Just shifting that language and that emphasis. Punctuation is important, right?
Yes, punctuation. Yes.
And it just is so wonderful to realize that. And just have been growing and contemplating this over the last few months and my relationship to those words, and to hear you reflect on it and pull all these other concepts in, it's just beautiful. And so I really want to thank you and helping understanding the difference between what I want and what I need. And turns out this is a path of discovery. So
yes.
Thank you so much, Tommy.
Thank you, Kevin, so much. And it is a path of discovery. And I guess what I realize now as a person on that path is that if I decide to remain in an addictive state, that's when it's no longer a path of discovery. I'm not able to discover. I'm gonna be on that Groundhog Day wheel, and I don't desire to be there today. So thank you so much again. I love you so much. So thank you for this inquiry.